Welcome to Successfully Depressed, and I'm your host, Kerry Finsand. And it's time to learn about how to navigate mental and physical health in life and business. Today's guest is Patty Morrissey. She has a master's degree in social work. She's the founder and head coach at Clear and Cultivate, and the creator of the Clear and Cultivate Method. Patty believes our home should spark joy, and that our own definition of success is the only one that really matters. In 2016, she became one of the first certified Konmari consultants in the world outside of Japan. Patty was dubbed a guru of tidiness by the New York Times and a magician by CBS This Morning. Welcome to the show, Patty.
Kerry, thanks for having me.
I like this. You're a guru and a magician, just a Renaissance woman, I guess, right?
I'm curious about a lot of things, and yeah, you got to grab those little one-liners when they give them to you in the media. So it's fun.
We both worked together at Groupon many years ago. I was based in Oregon doing outside sales and then marketing, and then you're based in Chicago. Tell me a little bit about that position to kind of, director of social innovation?
Yeah, well, we were there at Groupon during its heyday when it was skyrocketing. I think it was dubbed the fastest growing company of all time. And so it was an incredibly exciting time to be there. And Groupon was originally a platform called The Point. And The Point was a collective action fundraising website. Before Kickstarter was Kickstarter, actually the founders of Kickstarter got their whole tipping point model from The Point. And my job, I was hired by Andrew Mason and the founding team to make sure that the social justice intentions of The Point remained alive through the company as it was becoming Groupon. And so I actually was working on The Point at first, and I said, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have one employee over here in the corner working on The Point. Why don't we use the fuel of this fast-growing company? And I was really the founding head of corporate social responsibility, or what we called social innovation, because that's kind of the buzzword of that industry at the time. And I developed all of their fundraising efforts, employee volunteer program. I initiated some of the environmental sustainability efforts. But the campaign I'm most proud of there is the Love Local campaign, where I did a lot of public speaking and awareness raising internally to help the company and its leadership really understand and embrace the role it had in shaping, growing, nurturing, supporting local economies through its work with small, independently owned businesses.
Yeah, that's great. It's slowly coming back to me now. I was trying to do some research because I don't even remember all the things that I did back then. I do know that we talked a little bit about when I was creating a role as community manager for Groupon. I saw it as an opportunity, and I was trying to reach out to all the different departments. So I talked to you, and I talked to people, designers, like pretty much people from kind of touch points of every department to kind of understand like how this role could connect everything together, and ended up having this position come out called community manager to help support local, because at the time in Portland, we were getting some bad press. Willamette Week's like one of our local, newspapers. And on the cover of it, it had Calvin and Hobbes. And under Hobbes, I think there was a steaming pile of poop that said Groupon. Oh. And it said headline, Poop on Groupon. And there's just all this bad press around them. And I was like, it's too bad, because it's a very good platform. But early on, I think Groupon didn't know what they were doing, and I think also customers didn't know what they're doing. So it's a balance. Like some restaurants that could hold 20 tables of people. Oh, I want to sell 10,000 Groupons, which is not sustainable.
Right.
So I kind of created a role to help actually do seminars in the community for businesses, kind of help them get the most out of it. And it was a great experience. And then from one of the things that you were involved in, it was they had with The Point, what was that called again? Like we had this whole campaign that was continuing all the time. Was it
Groupon Grassroots?
Yes, Groupon Grassroots. That's what it was. So what I did is I played off of that, and I'm a big craft beer fan. And so I created my own holiday called Portland Beer Day, which is really every day in Portland. And we raised over $2,000 for the Glen Hay Falconer scholarship, which gives scholarships to people on become professional brewers. So anyways, so like that's kind of my story and kind of tying, kind of briefly into kind of what you did and kind of learning from some of the things that happened. And I just have to say it was just a great place to meet people. And, 10 plus years later, we're talking now.
Yeah, no, it was such a good experience, such an exciting time to be a part of all of that growth and change. And I feel like what I do sort of, there's a common thread from my whole story and the way I support individuals and organization. And it's really just trying to get to the heart of the matter of like, what are we supposed to be doing? What makes us come alive? What is this company's purpose and what's the individual's purpose? And if we can align with that, then good things are going to flow from there, right? Instead of trying to have a Groupon foundation or all these sort of other things, these tangents, why not just make the core product good? And so I help individuals sort of design a life in the same way of just let's make your life inherently joyful instead of drudgery and then joy on the weekends. How can we just integrate who we are and our life's purpose more seamlessly?
And so you have the passion to help people and you have the passion of learning. So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, to sum it up, I guess I always wanted to change the world and make a difference. And I think a lot of that for me, service is very healing. So even through my own sort of life struggles and challenges and traumas, I always found if I could focus on supporting other people, it really put my own challenges into perspective. So that's kind of how I'm wired, how I've always been wired. I remember being a little girl at sleepover parties, and whenever there was like little girl drama, I'd be the one to gather us around a circle and find common ground. And so it's no surprise that doing group work and facilitation is really where I'm happiest. And so through all of the different steps along the way in my career, I've just trusted the flow of life and trusted that call. And now that I'm turning 40, sometimes I'm like, am I still doing this right? Is it time to adult and do the responsible thing and go get a job with a pension at a bank or something? But I am just having faith that things always work out. And so Steve Jobs in his Stanford commencement speech has this quote: "You can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back." And that has really guided me. So, in undergrad, I studied psychology and was involved in, the campus assault response hotline and did some volunteerism there. Went to grad school for social work and helped the fraternities and sororities there. I created a service learning program, got a lot out of that. I interned with a sex therapist, which was really exciting and interesting. Met a good friend through that training. And then I started my own company out of grad school. So the work I was doing with the college students, I realized that service is such a powerful tool for bringing people together. So I had a team building company where I brought corporate groups and even like children's groups, school groups together, and I would organize days of service for them. And so I was doing that, but entrepreneurship, it was challenging. So I also had a day job at an employee assistance program. And that's when I found out about the Groupon opportunity. And I was brought in, and they really were excited about all of the nonprofit relationships that I had already established through my company and the fact that I was an entrepreneur. So they knew that they could just sort of give me an objective and that I would be able to work independently and be adaptable in that environment. And that was 5 years. I had a baby and got married, and then I felt like, is Chicago my forever home? And I moved to New York, where I'm originally from, and worked as the director of training for a crisis hotline. And in that time there, you can imagine how stressful that environment might be with the content of the job, but also the pressure. There was a lot there. So that's where I developed sort of a self-management and team management tool that I call Life KPI'S to help my staff of trainers avoid the burnout that's so common in those kinds of intense helping professions. And ultimately, it was best for me to do my own thing while my daughter was young so I could have full control over my time and be there for her, get her to and from preschool, and participate in all the things that are so you only get to experience them during that little window where your babies are little. And now she's turning 11 in a few days, and I'm ready for my next thing.
That's great. When you started off as a kid and you're basically starting kind of a group counseling back then, you were destined for this. It's always fun to hear people's stories, kind of like when they were kids, what they were doing, what they wanted to do. And sometimes it's the complete opposite. Now they don't have those interests, but I know for a lot of people, like when I was a kid, I had little businesses. Like we did a kids garage sale where we actually charged our neighborhood kid friends to sell their stuff at our garage sale.
You had like a vendor fee?
Yeah.
It's funny. I think that question of what did you love to do or what comes easily to take a look back on childhood, that's a good thing to look at. And so when I was in this job, commuting 2 hours each way to the city and feeling really stuck in that place, I made a list of things I wish I could get paid to do. And this was inspired by my friend, an entrepreneur, Saya Hillman. Her business is Mac and Cheese Productions. She's in Chicago. And she helps people do what she calls live a life of yes. And I've always admired her, followed her work. So I followed her example and just made this list that seemed ridiculous. It was things like, I wish I could organize playrooms and color code and have a Post-it and Sharpie collection and lead retreats and shop at garage sales. It was just the silliest list. And now that's my life, is doing all those things on that list.
So you kind of manifested it into existence.
Yeah, and because when you take away all of the pressure of what culture says you're supposed to do, and you get really honest with like what really makes you happy and what sparks joy in your heart, you'll find a way, because that's really what you're supposed to be doing. That's what I believe. And now that I've really designed my life around this spark joy concept, or Saya calls it live a life of yes, I use the language of aliveness. And if you're true to that aliveness, things just have a way of working out. But there's so many different texts. I read a lot. I probably read at least 2 books a week. And whether you're looking at business books or spirituality books, philosophy books, I read a broad range of things. And it all comes down to that. Like, what lights you up? What are you supposed to do? And good stuff comes from there. A lot of suffering comes from denying that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely am getting into reading a variety of spiritual books and business books and everything lately. And yeah, they say it in different ways, but it's kind of always the same kind of meaning. Exactly. And just, different kind of different take on it and everything. So that makes a lot of sense. With learning all this about yourself and what you like to do, I wonder right now, what's your next phase? I know you already have Cultivate Club. What are your goals with that?
Yeah, so Cultivate Club is really a culmination of my life's work. It's a women's empowerment group. Sometimes I call it a self-care sorority, although it's, there's no fraternity basements and exclusion involved or hazing or any of that. But it's just the most supportive group of women. One of my clients calls it the mothership of support. And it's for people who are really committed to personal growth and change and need support and are wanting to give support. And so that group is online. It was launched during the pandemic. And we practice the Clear and Cultivate method that I created. And it's incredible. So that will continue. I've trained coaches. I have a program manager. So it's really kind of running itself now. And I'm more of the, walking the halls as the founder. And so that's a really fun role to have in it as a member of the community. But I'm not responsible for the day-to-day of it. But also one of the things that I was really kind of blindsided by, because I enjoy the flexibility that comes with running an online business, but I found myself malnourished when it comes to in-person interaction. I'm a single parent. I work from home. And so I don't think I'm the only one struggling with that. And so I'm piloting right now Cultivate Club Local, and we've already had 2 meetings. On Monday night we went roller skating together, and I'm doing what I'm doing online, but now a local chapter model. So the online program will continue to exist, and that's like the signature core program. And then the local ones, it's kind of like the Red Hat Society for the modern woman. And I'm trying to give people that sense of consistency that like church or Bible study or even like an AA meeting or the PTA meetings used to provide, the Lions clubs and these sort of social groups that are now either too specific to a religion or a recovery group or a stage of life like nursing circles, and trying to create a space where any woman wants to come and feel more connected and have more community. And we meet up twice a month. And so I think beautiful things are going to arise out of that, but I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm doing it for myself to pilot it, and then I'll create a toolkit and launch that globally as well. I already have people who are interested in doing that, and that'll be more affordable. So I'm always, when I'm thinking about innovation, I also think about pricing innovation, because what I do, I want to lower the barrier to entry. It needs to be paid for. I have staff and expenses. But this model takes a $4,000 a year program and turns it into a $100 a year program. So I need volunteers and people who want to take on a local leadership role to organize these groups, just like you would a book club or something. But instead of reading a book, we're practicing this method of personal growth together. So that's my focus with that. And then I'm exploring sort of, it's kind of like a gap year experience. I want to find a local organization that could use my help, and I want to commit to them for a year or two, kind of like, I'm thinking of it almost as like a local Peace Corps, to get me, nourished again on that social interaction that I need. And then I'll continue to do Cultivate Club, and I also do trainings from Marie Kondo still, and companies hire me to do talks on Life KPI'S and lunch and learns and consulting and all of that on the side. So my coaching and consulting training business is very flexible, and so I'm looking for something in person that really speaks to my soul that I can support.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Just kind of being around people, you kind of get that energy. And I know for me, the like boot camp gym by my house, the pandemic unfortunately killed it. And it was this great group of people, and it was literally like a 2-minute walk from my house. So it was like the best of both worlds and stuff. And so even something like that, I think that the last several years of the pandemic, we've all lost a lot of community, and, talking to people like this is great. But also in person, that's even better. And I like the idea of you doing this on a local level, and something that you're kind of test piloting, and also to make it something that's affordable. I think that's really what's hard for a lot of people, where maybe they want like a life coach or a mentor, and they can't afford it. This is also like in healthcare, maybe they need a counselor, and that's a whole other thing too, where not everyone can afford things. And so the more the price point is something that's affordable for people, the more it benefits everybody, and then hopefully in society we can be more
Totally.
peaceful.
Yeah, and some people, can't afford it, and some people don't prioritize it. And my target demographic, they have a hard time prioritizing themselves. That's a big thing of what our work is involved in it. So I've gotten a lot of feedback that once they've signed up for the program, and I'm talking about the core program, that's a significant investment. That's really a big shift just right there before they even start the program, is they become someone who's put themselves last to really taking a serious making a serious commitment to themselves to make this investment and commit for a year to be with us through this growth experience. And it kind of like breaks the seal for them, because after my program, then they're signing up for all kinds of stuff, and they realize that when I make the investment in myself, I get the return on investment. whether it's, obvious in terms of their business growth and there's an immediate ROI there. But it saves them years of pain and struggle and suffering. People are saving their marriages and saving their families. They're healing a lot of stuff. And so my program is kind of a generalist one-stop shop. And then people will go on and realize like, oh, I could really use a relationships therapist, or I could really use a coach to help me with my finances. And so then they go on and do that. But at the local level, it's a good gateway. So I have been kind of looking for that initial easy yes that people can make to start investing in themselves and start showing up. And
well, I think there's a couple of things. One is that sometimes you might have the money, but you just have to figure it out. Like maybe you cut costs somewhere else.
Exactly.
Like you cut your cable. Or I had a friend that was like, "Oh, you spend how much money a month on this boot camp class?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not that much money." I'm like, "You could go to the bar less and you could afford it yourself." It's like it's all what people value money different
Absolutely.
ways. So that's part of it. But what I like about what you're talking about is the momentum, and I feel like when you're around the right people, you're getting that momentum. So it's all about the situation that you're putting yourself in. So if you're people that are always, negative and stuff, and they don't believe in you or don't believe in themselves, it can be more of a challenge. But if you're around people that, are believing in themselves and wanting to help others, and just in a positive space, that it attracts, like the negative energy attracts negative energy, the positive. And I've been noticing that myself in this last year or two, just like certain things, like why am I on social media now? I'm like in this weird mindset going like Facebook doom scrolling or something. So it's, we have to be more cautious of kind of our decisions and where we want to be.
Absolutely. So what you're talking about there is, in social work, there's a thought around the person and environment. So you're not just like taking a person out of context. You have to like view their situation more holistically. And so I start with the premise that like you're whole, perfect, good as you are. Let's just manipulate the environment that you're in. And so whether we're literally mean like the home environment, like through the organizing process, or the people that you surround yourself with, that's a big element. And so when you think of yourself as like a little acorn or a little seed, and you just think what would be the most nourishing environment to put myself in, that's what we're trying to do. The other thing is during the change process, often the people who love you the most, who really do love you, they do care about you, your spouse, your parents, your kids, your best friends, in a family system like that, you play a role. And when you change, even when you change for the better, it really disrupts that system, and people, consciously or not, will sabotage your growth because it threatens everything for them. It's like, oh, mom wants to go to work out in the morning. Well, how am I going to get to school? Or, oh, my wife is going to, be more attractive, and then she's not going to be attracted to me. And then that threatens my connection with her. And, it's that kind of thing. Or when you start getting healthier, and then people feel bad about themselves because they're making poor choices, and you didn't tell them that they needed to change, but just your betterment makes them feel bad about themselves. So then they just demean you. So it's really important when you're going through a change process, especially in the beginning, to find a tribe of people who are doing that as well, and practice that with them. They're not gonna sabotage you. The other thing is that if your connection to a group is dependent on you remaining the same, you're not going to change, because belonging is one of those base level needs. You've got physiological survival, and then you have belonging. So your higher level, growth and actualization, you're not going to pursue that if your belonging needs are threatened. So in Cultivate Club, we fulfill that, like, you're connected, you belong. So a lot of times the work that we do strengthens people's relationships, but sometimes they realize the person I'm married to or the friends that I have, they're not as supportive as I thought they were, and they start to deteriorate, but we hold them while they're rebuilding their new relationships locally in that process. So it is important whether you join a Cultivate Club or a group like ours, to find. And that's kind of why AA exists, because you can't stay friends with the guys at the bar anymore if you want to change your life.
Yeah, and that's what you were talking about earlier about kind of changing your environment. You know, it helps change your life, and I think that's a good segue into the Konmari Method. And I just have a note here that I like the definition of what it's about, but it says, when you reassess your belongings and organize your home, you set the stage for a huge transformation. This is the magic of tidying. So this sounds like it's kind of an idea of changing the environment and getting momentum. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that program and how you got into it and what it's all about?
Yeah, so the Konmari Method was created by Marie Kondo. She's a Japanese organizing consultant. She now lives in the U.S., in California, with her husband and her 3 kids, and so she has an army of consultants. I was one of the first, and now I train consultants on how to do this method. But I've also worked with clients and I'm a master level consultant. So I've gone through the process myself, and I've worked with many people to help them go through it themselves. And it's a comprehensive tidying process. And I think people are originally drawn to it because they understand that they have too much stuff or they feel cluttered, and then they initiate that process. For me, the result of having a beautifully organized, aesthetically pleasing home is like the icing on the cake. But the real weight and impact of the process is that you have to get really clear on where you want to go, what your vision for your ideal lifestyle is, and then you have to learn how to make decisions for yourself. So I think the big outcomes of the Konmari Method are that you learn to trust your instincts, you learn to express gratitude for what you have, and you learn to let go. And these are all things that are just good life lessons. But what's so powerful about the Konmari Method is that you are actually tangibly doing this. So you're holding an object up, you're making a decision, is this worth keeping in my life or not? Yes or no? You're letting your body you're learning that deeper level intelligence. It's not an intellectual decision. It's really that kind of deeper inner heart knowing, that gut heart kind of feeling. And you're just making decisions around t-shirts, right? And you do that through every object that you have. Now you have the practice of, how many objects do you have? Thousands, tens of thousands in your home. By the end of the process, you're a very decisive person. You really understand what you're about, what you're not about, what sparks joy for you, what doesn't. And so then when you're faced with bigger life decisions about what you should do with your career, or who you should date, what you should do with your marriage, if relationships feel good or not, should I move across the country to pursue this opportunity, you'll know, like, this is such a hell yes kind of feeling for me, because a lot of those true hell yes opportunities are often not what culture wants you to do. So to be brave in life, you have to have that like strength, inner strength, to know that like, this is so true for me. So the Konmari Method is just like applied meditation. It's like a training ground for developing your intuition and your decisiveness.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know a lot about it, and I watched a little bit of one of the episodes on Netflix of that she has talking about things, and it's kind of hard for people to let certain things go.
Absolutely.
My wife is very, very organized and more of a minimalist. I'm not a pack rat, but I definitely like to keep things. And for me, it's like, I might need that someday. It's not necessarily, I'm usually not attached to much of it, maybe a few things. Like my shirts from college that I had, like my fraternity shirts or something random that I had. I'm like, oh, I still have those. I don't know why. I don't really need them. So you're basically saying, okay, we can start with something that's a physical thing and something that's tangible in front of us, and then we can leverage that into the rest of our lives and how we make decisions moving forward.
Yeah, it just, you kind of develop your muscle around that decision making. And with ideas, it's really easy to collect them and let them pile up. And we don't, there's unlimited storage space for ideas. So we think like, why not just hold on to them all? But they drain us just as much as like the stuff that's clogging our closets and under the bed and all of that. And it's David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, talks about it like mental RAM. Another author, the book is the Mayo Clinic's Guide to Stress-Free Living, they talk about like open files. And the more open files you have, the slower you're going to go, the more stress you're going to feel. So when I'm doing the Konmari Method with people, I say, the reason clutter feels so heavy is not just like that it looks heavy, but every object is like an obligation. You know, that book that you're keeping on how to brew beer is sort of an obligation to learn how to brew beer. And you're like, okay, that was like a fun idea 7 years ago. I'm done with that now. I'm going to release it. And sometimes there's casualties, you know, we get rid of things and you're like, dang, like, I wish I kept that. But that does not happen very frequently. And the letting go of those items really opens up space for what is yours to come in. So you have to let yourself navigate that empty space. And I often use the example of like a trapeze. So where I am today, I'm standing on a platform, maybe I'm holding onto the bar, and sometimes I leap because what's on the other side is like very clear and very enticing. And sometimes I leap because the platform I'm on is crumbling and I need to let go. And whether you're jumping out of, you know, excitement or jumping out of fear, you can't avoid this middle space where you're just in thin air. And we don't like that feeling. We want to feel grounded. So it's important. And you're going to jump more easily if you have less weight on you. So we don't want to have a lot of old baggage when we're going into the next stage. So I do a lot of blank slate kind of exercises. And kind of, I just broke my wrist. And that is forcing the like, okay, I cannot afford to do things that aren't really critical, that aren't really essential. And so it's this prompt to declutter my to-do list, declutter my ideas, and only do what's essential. And I think even after this heals, I'll hopefully retain some of that and keep working lighter and faster because of it.
Yeah, maybe it's also something where you just been really busy working on your business and now you have that moment to kind of reflect and say, beyond just healing my wrist, what are other things I can work on that I've been wanting to do for a while that aren't business related, that just kind of for taking care of myself. So what are some things you like to do to kind of take care of your kind of mental and physical health?
Yeah, well, I read a lot. I really enjoy reading and learning and connecting, but I live by a set of life KPIs. So whenever I'm feeling off, I'll take a look at my dashboard, and usually, you know, I'm neglecting something. And as soon as I start to work on that and give it more of my attention, I feel a lot better. So for me, relationships matter a lot. Community matters a lot. So a lot of my life KPIs are about other people. So I have walks in nature. That's a huge one for me. Visits with friends, date night, and new experiences because I love learning. And so even like I've never broken anything before. So I'm like, oh, okay, new experience, check. It's a positive. Like I haven't ever experienced this before. Interesting. And the other one, what did I miss? Oh, service to others. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like some of the basic things that we need to kind of survive. It's kind of based off of that, maybe a little bit, or.
Well, it was really just an exercise when I thought about, you know, I'm 100 years old looking back on my life. How do I know it was a good one? Mm-hmm. And I let the movie, sort of the ideal movie montage, play out. And those were the themes in my life. It's a life that's like a life of service, a life of deep, meaningful relationships, and a life where I continue to learn and grow every step of the way. And a life where I was connected to myself and connected to my truth. And that's the woods is the place where I feel the most connected to myself.
Well, you need to come out and visit my wife and I and come hike out in the Columbia River Gorge. It is beautiful. Absolutely. I don't know if you've been there. Have you been there?
No. And so I'm on Long Island where like it's wilderness with a lowercase W. When I'm in like wilderness with a capital W, it's a little terrifying because it's like, oh, you can really get lost out in here. But yeah, guided hikes with friends, like check.
Yep. Yeah, just getting in nature. That's what my wife, like, she's in the banking world, but for her, she knows that yoga, she does yoga several times a week. That works great for her. And then she loves kayaking, and she kayaks year round.
Wow.
And that's like her passion. And I know if I said, "Oh no, this weekend you can't go kayaking," then it's sort of like, then that's her joy. She needs that and everything. You have to find what you really enjoy doing and everything. But yeah,
Absolutely. And I love how you say that because it's not a one size fits all. Everyone has their own thing that is joyful and nourishing to them. And if you know that about your partner or your team at work, your boss, your employees, your children, then you're going to encourage them to pursue those things and they're going to come back a better version of themselves to be in relationship with. So we want to encourage that. My boyfriend loves to surf, so same, yeah, year round, it's his thing, and he has to do it.
in New York, it's got to be pretty cold then.
It is. He has all the gear. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he has all the gear.
Yeah, that's like with her too. She has the gear to do stuff in the wintertime, and I think that's great. That's what she wants to do. It, but I'm like, there's pictures of her like with icicles on her helmet and stuff. I'm like, wow,
Wow.
you're really hardcore into this stuff, and that's great. That's what that's that she loves it and everything. So, so that kind of leads it more into the kind of life KPI. So, from the Cultivate Club, maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about, if someone wanted to get involved in the Cultivate Club. How would that work basically? I know right now it's only for women. I'm not sure if you're going to have, is women just your niche, if you want to expand to men too.
Yeah, well, I've heard from men that they want to join and they want a group for them, and so I'm open to exploring that if someone wants to raise their hand and get trained as a coach to coach a men's group, because the tools are, they work for everybody. But the vibe that we have right now, there's something special about having a women's group. But that's been something I've thought a lot about. Like, should I have co-ed? Should I not? How should that work? And right now, I think for the women to feel like they can fully be free in how they're talking, that it works this way. I've even gotten requests to have a curriculum for kids or for teens. So, one thing at a time is kind of how I'm approaching it. But if people want to join, they simply go to joincultivateclub.com, fill out an application. It's open enrollment year round, although we do a big enrollment in January. And so people join us for the entire year. It's a year-long commitment. But I've decided not to fully close the doors in case someone's like, I really need this right now. I'm not going to make them wait 6 months before giving them the access. We do sell out though. The program closes at 50 members. That's the model that I have right now. But the local groups, I will be opening that up, and that won't have a limitation. If anyone wants to be a local chapter leader, I don't even have information available about that yet on my website, but they can still just go to the Join Cultivate Club website and just send us a little note through there, and we'll get them on the list for that when we start offering the trainings.
What would be for somebody, I know we kind of just talked about life KPIs a little bit, but what's kind of the high level process? What is your philosophy for that basically?
Yeah, well, first, with life KPIs, first thing I want to sort of convince people to do is that it's worth tracking your own definition of success, especially in these times that we live in, because culture is keeping score already. And things like comparison on social media or professional comparison or things that people have and own, and you comparing yourself to other people isn't something that you can control. It's just something that you are wired to do. And so we have exposure now to so many different people all over the world all the time that it's really hard to get off that hedonic treadmill. And so if you know that, well, I know myself, this is what makes me happy, this is what makes me thrive, it's important to just have your little checklist, your scorecard, so that when that comparison does bubble up and start to affect you, you can take a look at the values that you're living by. And people, they have core values, they have their personal goals and things. But values can be really vague. And so Life KPIs takes it a step further, and instead of just living virtuously, you actually have a score, and you can see it going up or down, and you can start to see trends of, well, when I'm feeling this way, if these indicators are there, it's a pretty good indicator that my life is moving in the direction that it should. And then if someone's living their life in a different way, you say, good for you. I have a different scorecard than you. And there's mutual respect in that as well. So it's really useful for as a self-management tool, but it's also useful as an employee management tool. So a lot of companies right now are trying to figure out, how do we create a culture that supports everyone's individuality and honors everyone's individuality and uniqueness, but is fair. So we need this like one size fits all kind of policy, but then we need to make it available to everyone on their individual preferences and needs. And so Life KPIs, I think, and this is experimental, I'm working with some companies now to see how this is going to play out for them, is really honoring what everybody's individual priorities are. So if, Kerry, your life priority is learning new things, then as a manager, I can help you achieve that by giving you new projects to work on. I don't have to give you a raise. I don't have to give you more time off. I don't have to buy all these incentives. I just need to know that you're driven by newness and to give you learning experiences. Whereas maybe one of your colleagues really wants time with their kids. And so when they request Fridays off in the summer, then I honor that because that's what's driving them. And so the process is really simple. When I invented it, it was modeled after Ben Franklin, actually. So this isn't this is an old idea. Ben Franklin used to carry around a little notebook, and he would check off how well he adhered to his 13 virtues that were his. 13 is a lot to track, I think. So I try to encourage people to choose 3 to 5 things that are most important, and that's your little dashboard. And I just went through this exercise on the train as really out of desperation and identified some big buckets like mental health, physical health, relationships, personal growth that were key to me. For other people, it might be adventure, travel, creativity. It might be, financially successful. It might be achievement oriented. And from those big bucket areas, we don't just say, I want to be someone who's, committed to personal growth. What does that actually mean? And for me, my metric is new experiences. Some of my clients, they count sunsets at the beach or number of creative projects that they do. I have someone else who has tea time every day. And those are the things that they want to make sure that they're checking the box on.
I think that makes sense because, I think you and I are similar in the fact that we want to help people out and we both want to learn and we're curious people. And I just started this week, set a goal for myself to give myself of 30 minutes a day of learning something new or 30 minutes a day or of doing something creative. And so that's what I'm kind of working in my schedule instead of just being so rigid where I have to do all these things and because sometimes you kind of get into the zone, even editing the podcast, sometimes one day that's all I'm doing, but it's not really, it's better to do a little bit every day. At least that's what I'm trying to do now. So I've been doing that myself lately, just kind of looking at, okay, how does this fit my needs and everything and making sure that every day I get this creative stuff because doing certain things like editing and stuff isn't always as creative. And then versus I like using Canva and designing different graphics for things I'm working on. So it's that's kind of my fun time. And then figuring out your own personal manual, what are the best times a day you can do things. For me, the things that are more brain intensive are the first half of the day. The second half of the day is more the creative stuff. Do you kind of look at things that way too?
Yeah, there's a flow to it all. But the way I use Life KPIs, it's different than I don't have a target every week. I generally there's a dose that feels good. but I don't feel bad if they go down. I mean, I don't like beat myself up about it, like I didn't hit my target, but I just take it as an indicator of, oh, I need more attention in this area, and I make time for it. So I do a weekly planning process at, typically Sunday night, sometimes Friday afternoon. I look at the following week, and before anything else gets scheduled, I try to schedule the Life KPIs in. So the date night, the time with my daughter. I try to think, oh, I haven't seen friends in a while. Let me make sure to, and right there on the spot, I'll text a few friends that I want to see. A new experience, sometimes that's something I plan for, like I signed up for goat yoga the other day and took a goat yoga class. And sometimes it's more of just an openness to new experience. And so I'm kind of open all the time. And so when, life presents an opportunity and someone's like, do you want to go dance in the rain? I'm like, yeah, of course. We're going to do that because that's new and exciting. The nature walks, I certainly plan in my schedule, and then everything gets fit in around that.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of putting yourself, your personal priorities first, and then working those in, because a lot of times we do the opposite. We're like, what are all the things I have to get done this week? And it becomes this like never ending checklist, and it gets kind of overwhelming and everything. And to look at that perspective and let's make sure we actually plan these things into the week so that we just don't forget about them.
Well, whether you're self-employed or you work for somebody, a lot of people operate from this place of, well, when the work is done, then I get to, and the work is never done. That doesn't exist. I mean, unless you're making widgets and after 100 widgets are made, then you're done. But a lot of us are in that, and especially if you're in a creative field, which a lot of us are, where it's just about ideas and execution on those ideas and perfecting on the ideas. It's just a never-ending process of invention, building and polishing. And so we do need to put some boundaries around that. And so I say, my day didn't happen until a nature walk happened. And you can get stuck in Google Docs and email land for a long time. And Life KPIs trains you to realize that not only is it acceptable to step outside of that, to have the visit with a friend or go on the nature walk, but that your work is actually better off for it.
Yeah, you recharge yourself. Your mind can only process so much. And I know the things I've been learning about lately is that we can only make so many decisions in a day, and we get decision fatigue. It's like you're talking about, like the open tabs on your Windows and your computer, the never-ending list, things like that. If you look at it that way and you don't take the necessary breaks, then your mind just is not going to work as well. And then you're kind of spinning your wheels, and you're trying to get something done, and you never get it done, or it's not really that great.
Yeah, and when you think about, if 200 years ago when someone was working on something, there was no distractions. It was just whatever was in front of them, and they had the limitation of like daylight and stuff to deal with, and there was just a natural pull. Nature was creating a rhythm for you around that. And so you kind of asked about like energy levels, but I also think there's like a cyclical aspect of this in the day, in the year, but there's also different micro seasons of life that I think we need to honor. And so one of the micro seasons is parenthood and parenting a young child. And so I really appreciate how fleeting this is. And there'll be a time later where I can grind a little bit more. But when given the choice of turning towards my daughter or turning away from her, I turn towards her. And my work suffers for it. And I'm okay with that. We have to make trade-offs. But I get less done. I'm not winning any awards for the fastest to respond to email. I frustrate a lot of people because of that, I'm sure. But in life, you have to be willing to disappoint people. And Life KPIs make sure that you're not the one that's being disappointed in the pursuit of trying to please everybody else.
I like that. You're setting boundaries.
Big time. Yeah.
That's just a lot of great tips there. I want to ask, where can people find you online and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I am at pattymorrissey.com, joincultivateclub.com. LinkedIn is probably the social media platform that I'm spending the most time on, although not much at all. Instagram at Patty Morrissey and at Join Cultivate Club. Not super active on those, but I have a little micro presence on there. But yeah, email hello@pattymorrissey.com as well.
Well, Patty, again, thank you for your time, and I always like to end my show with, you're not alone in life or business. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, good message. Thanks, Kerry.